Hey guys, it's Nobody, and today I want to talk about the Simgot EW200. Now, I chose the EW200 because I really wanted to do a video on a single dynamic driver. And honestly, an interesting thing happened in the hobby last year, and it has a lot to do with Simgot. They basically proved to everyone in the hobby and other companies that you don't have to pay an arm and a leg to get a good single dynamic driver earphone. And honestly, they did an amazing job because Simgot got on everybody's radar last year. Now, I could have done it about the EA500 or the LM, which is the EA500's predecessor, but really, I think it started with the Simgot EW200. Now, the Simgot EW200 costs about $40, and for $40 you get a good price to performance ratio. Now, the Simgot, let's start off with the build, has an all metal shell, which is very durable, and it feels like it's, good quality. And honestly, as IEM companies start to pivot to 3D printing, acrylic shells and resin shells, it's nice to see an all metal build on an IEM at this price point. Now, let's get into some of the more interesting things about the Simgot EW200. Now, one thing I'd like to talk about is the driver. The driver is, according to Simgot, SPC diaphragm technology, and I'm gonna pull up what the product read, or basically the stuff that Simgot marketed the EW200 with, and you can pause the video and read all of that stuff. But essentially, it's just a composite polymer that Simgot claims combines the best qualities of the DLC diaphragm, diamond-like carbon, and a LCP diaphragm, which is liquid crystal polymer. And I'll just quickly explain how a dynamic driver works. A dynamic driver, if you didn't know, is actually the most common earphone and headphone driver you can get, and that's because it's really only made up of three components: a magnet, a voice coil, and a diaphragm. So how this works basically is that electricity goes through the cable, and then it hits the voice coil, which is like a little copper ring that's sort of like wedged in between a magnet. And what that does is that electricity creates an electromagnetic field, and it moves the voice coil. Now, in front of the voice coil is going to be the diaphragm. And so when that electromagnetic field starts, the diaphragm becomes manipulated by the voice coil, and then the diaphragm pushes air, and thus you have sound. I'll try and include some visuals, and I'll also leave some links in the description below so you can do some reading up if you so please, and educate yourself about this stuff because it is quite interesting. Now, basically what I'm trying to say, and I guess marketing aside, what Simgot is trying to say is that they didn't skimp on the driver and the diaphragm. It's actually a good driver, and it's made up of quality components. Now, let's move on to the graph. Now, interestingly, Simgot says that they combined the EW200's the tuning target for the EW200 is combined with the Harman 2016 target and the Simgot Classic target. Now, essentially what this means, and I'm gonna save explaining Harman for another day, but essentially the Harman target is supposed to be a target that most people find pleasing, and Simgot put their spin on it by combining their classic target with the Harman target. So essentially what they tried to do was create a target that doesn't sound as thin as a Harman target on its own, and they sort of added their own spin when it comes to basically the bass and the treble of the Simgot's tuning. Essentially, they added a little bit more warmth, and I think they tried to make the treble a bit smoother. Now, did they succeed? I think they succeeded in creating an IEM that does not sound thin. I would not say the Simgot EW200 sounds thin. And I think I'm just going to go out and say it. This probably has the best treble of any single dynamic driver in the $40, I'd even say up to the $60, $70 price range. Now, I hear the LM is quite good, and that's the new benchmark for the single dynamic driver under $100. But I would say this would be the benchmark for a single dynamic driver under $50. Is that fair? I think that's fair. So yeah, let's just explain the tuning of the Simgot, because again, I want to educate myself more about the Harman target, so I don't really want to make this video about the Harman target just yet. I just want to read the graph. So if we start at the sub bass, the Simgot has a very nice sub bass boost. It's definitely 3 or 4 dBs above neutral, and it's quite satisfying. It delivers a nice rumble. I have tested it on J. Cole's Neighbors, which is that intro with the 808s is my test track for testing sub bass, and it replays that about, I would say, true to the mix. And as far as the mid bass goes, it has quite a bit of mid bass. It starts to kind of go slope on a downward trend, but again, I like to test these things with music, as they're meant for playing music. And my test track for mid bass, I have 2. It would be The Way You Make Me Feel by Michael Jackson and Forgot About Dre by Dr. Dre featuring Eminem. Now, let's start with the Michael Jackson track. The intro has this like sort of multi-directional sweeping boom 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 sort of drum sound to it, and usually mid bass helps accentuate the sound of drums. It helps them pop out a little bit, and I would say that the Simgot replays this as well as IEM's like way above its price. It's a very satisfying drum hit. I would say the same thing for Forgot About Dre. Throughout the song, there's this drum sound. I would really love to know how it's engineered, but it's like ba-doop, ba-doop. And that sort of happens throughout the track. You can go listen to these, and hopefully you can kind of hear what I'm talking about. But essentially, the Simgot EW is stellar in the low end. It does everything quite well, from rap to dance music to pop. This is an IEM that I would consider an all-rounder, and honestly, all-rounders have to do, as the name says, everything pretty good. And usually a lot of IEMs fail to reproduce bass in a way that's satisfying, and I think the Simgot, for its price, does a pretty good job. Now let's head into the mids. Now, as we get into the mids, you'll see that there is a little bit of a scoop, and usually an IEM, or when audio engineers are tuning IEMs, that 400 to, I want to say, 600, maybe that 450 hertz to 600 hertz region. Sometimes a little trick that audio engineers do is scooping out that just a tiny bit, because that creates a sense of clarity. I've often heard Critical refer to the 500 to 600 hertz as the mud frequency, and that's why if you look at a lot of graphs, a lot of IEMs are going to scoop that out just a little bit, like south of neutral, because it helps to create a sense of clarity. Now when we get to the pinna gain, again, the pinna gain is essentially an upward slope on almost every IEM, and essentially the IEM and the IEM manufacturer, and the audio engineers are essentially trying to guess how much gain to apply so that it sounds natural to your ears. So as far as the Simgot, I think it's a fairly average pinna gain. Most IEMs are gonna kind of have this rise. It's not too aggressive. I don't think it rises too early. I don't think it rises too late, if that makes sense. And what that does is that transition into the upper mids. This is basically where vocals, like female vocals, are going to sit. Male vocals are going to kind of sit a little further back in just like the mids, not the upper mids. But and some higher frequency instruments are also going to sit up here. Basically, when it comes to an IEM having a correct tonality, the mids are going to play a huge part, because I want to say 60, maybe even more, 60% of instruments and vocals are going to sit somewhere in the mid-range. The bass, the low end, that's going to take care of things like drums, bass guitars, 808s, stuff like that. But vocals, a good amount of instrument frequencies are going to sit in that mid-range area. So I hope that makes sense. And now I want to talk about the upper mids. So we're going to be talking about the 3K to 6,000 kilohertz. Now we'll say 3,000 kilohertz to about 8,000 kilohertz. I'd like to call that the upper treble. 3,000 kilohertz may be a bit too early, sorry, I'm rambling. Let's say about 5,000 kilohertz to 8,000 kilohertz, we'll call that the upper treble. Now, essentially, this is where the Simgot, there is a bit of an elephant in the room, and that is the Simgot is bright. It does have a good low end. It does have a good mid-range reproduction, but that's not to say that this IEM is not bright, and it's as bright as some V-shaped IEMs are. The treble really sticks out on this IEM, and if you like that, if you like treble, gonna like that. if you don't like treble, if you're sensitive to shout, I'm sorry to say that the Simgot can be shouty for some, and that might be its only flaw. Now, when we get into the treble or like the air region, it also has quite a substantial spike, and that also contributes to its sense of clarity and space. But again, it's going to sound bright. And let me just talk about some of the music that I listen to. As I've mentioned before, the Simgot to me is a very good all-rounder IEM because it works with rap, because it's got that low end. It works with, let's say, jazz. I like to listen to jazz on this because it's got that high end as well. So, you know, things like trumpets, woodwind instruments, you know, they're going to really sound, and also like, you know, cymbals, they're going to sound very, I don't want to say emphasized, they're going to sound natural. They're going to sound like cymbals are going to sound metallic. I wouldn't quite call them splashy. And you know, let me just go ahead and say that I wouldn't call them splashy because, again, I think because of the quality internals of the Simgot, the treble on this is some of the best treble you'll get for anything under $50. You know, it is bright, but it's smooth and refined. Again, let me just say that it is bright, but it's smooth and refined, and you know, maybe it will become fatiguing after a while, but it's honestly, it gives this Simgot, it gives this IEM a sense of clarity and a sense of accurate reproduction that you won't get until you move up a couple price brackets. Now, I don't want this video to be too long, so to end this video, let me quickly talk about the technicalities of the Simgot, because I did mention the tonality, which I think I covered, and so let me just talk about the technicalities really quick. The Simgot, for a $40 IEM, has probably the best head stage, and I wouldn't call it sound stage because, you know, if it's out of the air, it's not too far out of the airs, because honestly, most IEMs kind of don't get further than about, you know, and say these are my airs, most IEMs don't get really further than about this much. You know, really exceptional IEMs can get a little further, but really most IEMs don't even manage to get really out of your ears, if that makes sense. I know everybody hears technicalities differently, so this might just be, you know, my opinion, and one man's opinion can differ from the next man or woman, but you know, that's all I have to say about that. So the head stage, for me, for a $40 budget IEM, it's quite good. That's basically what I'm trying to say. And then as far as like separation, again, I think for $40, this is some of the best separation you're gonna get until you jump up a couple price brackets. Again, as far as like imaging, it's going to be some of the best imaging you're gonna get until you jump up. Actually, I won't say that. You can get pretty good imaging IEMs for 40 bucks. I just made a video about the Moondrop SSR. I'll link that up there. But yeah, this is some of the best technicalities combined with the best tonality that you're gonna get for this price range. And so I don't want my video to be more than 20 minutes, so I'm gonna end it there. That's the Simgot EW200, one of my favorite IEMs. I listen to this regardless of the price. This is in my regular rotation. I love it for jazz. So yeah, I just wanted to make a video about this. Hopefully this informed you about some stuff, and I'll see you on the next one.